Not on, yeah. Yeah, just wait. Just wait. Okay. Now you're on.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Honourable Speaker, Leader of the LPM, Honourable Members, the rule of law and its accompanying imperatives lays the foundation for a normal functioning society where human flourishing occurs. The contractuary budget provides a foundational statement of management policies of which a standard for comparison with results actually achieved. More so, the state debt stands at 117 billion, coupled with a decline in revenue collection, of which in the current budget, SACCO receipts account for 43% of the total revenue. As we are aware, growth in South Africa is forecasted to contract severely in 2020 and possibly post marginal growth in the preceding year of 2021. Hence, this will drive a downward trajectory in the SACCO receipts. In addition, the impact of COVID-19 will weigh on both personal and corporate income tax collections. With that backdrop, the revenue outlook continued to deteriorate, along with a weaker-than-expected economic growth. The fundamental question that arises from this is how the economy is expected to perform and sustain economic growth. In addition, expansion of the government debt is not favorable, as we might expect a further downgrading from the credit ratings agencies. As we speak now, 8 billion is projected to financing interest or other state repayments. As a case in point, a payment of interest which stands at 8 billion currently exceeds the development budget allocated, which is 6 billion. In other words, Honourable Speaker, we spend more in the repayment of interest of loan than on development projects, with a country that ought to push for industrialization and foster growth. Therefore, the much often repeated rhetoric of the Namibian House of Peace, Stability and Economic Emancipation becomes a facade. The global COVID-19 pandemic exposed hidden scars of state-sanctioned and state-driven economic mismanagement and maladministration, which has deepened animosities, class animosities in the past 30 years. Namibia's urban population is estimated to 47%, and it's projected to grow by 60% in 2041. In 2018, an estimate of 40%, which totals 960 Namibians of a 2.4 million population, are living in shacks. Namibia has a staggering housing backlog of 300,000 units, which might take 300 years to eradicate. The urban dilemma and of development of informal settlements confirms that regional and local governments are failing to respond effectively to the growth in urban centers and the needs of urban residents. Local authorities in Namibia are challenged with the provision of housing, water, sanitation, social facilities in a reasonable manner and speed. Almost 85% of informal settlements and settlers in Windhoek do not own a piece of land they occupy. Honourable members, Honourable Speaker, rapid urbanization is changing the face of history, and without adequate policy development and implementation, it is expected that the majority of the poor will live on urban periphery in preference to living in rural areas. Namibia has a high rural and urban migration due to increased drought desertification, land degradation, and rural poverty. Urbanization provides significant opportunity for the access to employment and other economic activities. We have observed that the efforts to adequately and timelessly address humanitarian and economic conditions of our people, sanitation and hygiene are one of the examples that have been an epic failure. There is a complete lack of adequate sewage in the most rural communities and mostly in informal settlements throughout Namibia. Therefore, Honourable Speaker, Honourable Members, we as the Landless People's Movement propose the following radical interventions. Number one, massive housing investments. We propose massive housing investment of 5 billion annually under a decent housing approach. Local authorities through the MURD will be mandated to be the implementing bodies. There should not be no national housing enterprise involvement, as this entity is besieged by internal corruption and has no good record from previous experiences under the former President Pohamba and Honorable Sophia Shaningwa, then Minister of Urban Rural Development. With this, we recall the famous line of former President Pohamba, "Hi Lulu, why a one door for the houses?" Second, Urban Regional Planning Act of 2018. We further propose that the government invoke Urban and Regional Planning Act of 2018 in order to accelerate the upgrading of informal settlements and to address land tenure crisis and provide title deeds for so-called illegal plot owners in urban areas with immediate effect. By enforcing relevant municipal town lands, laws and regulations. Number three, fit-for-purpose land administration system. The Ministry of Urban and Rural Development must focus on a fit-for-purpose land administration system that will do away from one-size-fits-all housing development modules, which will provide tenure, security and housing quicker and based on needs assessments and affordability of each beneficiary, while allowing for upgrading over the years. Number four, Flexible Land Tenure Act. We further propose for the implementation of the Flexible Land Tenure Act, which will allow for cheaper, more flexible and land registration system in urban areas, as the conventional land registration system is too costly and cumbersome. Relevant policies and laws must be amended in order to accommodate and consider title registration as according to the Flexible Land Tenure Act. This could also entail substituting institutions such as NAMPAM and township boards with more flexible committees, who will scrutinize development in informal settlements and above such. Number five, outlaw speculations on land. Outlaw speculation on town land and effect clause in the Land Act to ban exorbitant house prices from commercial banks. Banks must be regulated strictly on home loans being granted at the high interest rates, especially for first-time buyers. A registry system will be developed whereby prospective first-time owners will be registered and receive government subsidy to reduce burden on first-time homeowners. Cross-referencing modules must be applied to avoid cross-subsidization of middle and higher income earners. A targeted approach shall be to identify potential first-time homeowners for prioritization for urban land allocations. Further, the government must, and I repeat, must expropriate urban land on the indication of landowners acquiring and retaining vacant land for speculative purposes. A system must be developed by the government to impose higher rates and taxes on vacant unused land in order to discourage speculative holding of land and under-utilization of land. Expropriation of urban land shall target unused, unproductive vacant land in densely populated towns for the provision of housing and other services. All unused and unproductive land in urban areas which were donated to former presidents of Namibia by national, central, regional and local governments must be expropriated. Any land donated for a good cause or which public benefit which is not used for such purpose and later resold for profit motive must be expropriated. Lastly but not least, land for livelihoods. We propose that the government must pursue urban for food programs to promote township horticultural farming and food self-sufficiency. in order to enhance our people's livelihoods and dietary contents, improving the health and well-being of our households. A new development module of mixed residential areas should be considered, which will contribute to the livelihoods of urban dwellers, and this would include an interjection into the informal market development, which considers recreation areas, informal markets, SME, and mixed use of development, thus bringing services and jobs closer to our people. Bonganda. Therefore, our physiological precision on the decent housing approach is that it will create a market for affordable housing, which will allow the hard-working, ordinary Namibian an opportunity for security and a place to call home. I thank you.
Thank you.